And we reread our theme verse. Where was that? 28? Chapter 19, verse 28. You shall not. Kind of sounds like a command, doesn't it? You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh of the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. It is satanic to put tattoos and cuttings on yourself. And that is a very common thing going on today. Tattoos everywhere you go. And kids in school cutting themselves and things of that nature, just really some wild stuff going on. Carl, put number 74 up there, okay? Figure out where we left off in a minute in our study. Technical difficulties. Don't you hate electronic stuff? Yeah. There's going to be none in heaven.
All right.
None at all. Okay. Sign of tattoos is rebellion. We talked about that for several points. Number 5, if you are taking note, tattoos are the mark of perversion. The mark of perversion. Studies done on tattoos have linked them to homosexuality, to lesbianism, and to gross sexual perversion. I'm going to give you some more quotes tonight to show that. And again, I remind you, I'm quoting from their own literature, okay? Their own books. Pro-tattooists wrote these books. The book titled Art, Sex, and Symbol, page 87, quote, "To be fair to those who maintain that tattooing is linked to homosexuality, investigations conducted in a New Zealand Borstal, which is a prison, for girls revealed that of the 60% tattooed, 90% of those tattooed admitted to lesbian behavior during corrective treatment. Yet further analysis indicated a ratio of aggression," we saw that last week, "to the number of tattoos." Did you hear that? A ratio of aggression to the number of tattoos a person has. And that the most heavily tattooed girls were unstable and insecure and tended to take the masculine role in their encounters. End of quote. That's quite a negative assessment in a book that is pro-tattoo. In the book Psychiatric Implications of Tattoos, says, and this is written by Robert Rasper, who is a family physician. It says on page 159, talking about the things associated with tattoos. Among these conditions, Rasper cited impulsiveness, low self-esteem, lack of self-control, homosexual orientation, lesbianism, antisocial personality, borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, mania, and bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, in a quote. What he just said is anybody with a tattoo is nuts. Yeah. Amen. They're crazy. Amen. Put the next one up, Carl. Tattoos are the mark of personality disorders. Again, a lot of studies have been done, and these studies show that self-inflicted tattoos, those you put on yourself, and I know man's got one right here. He's about 50-something, then around 60 years old. Put it on there when he's a teenager, it's still there. Self-inflicted tattoos are frequently associated with people with personality disorders, troubled backgrounds, and self-mutilation tendencies. To deliberately cut yourself has to be demonic, satanic, inflict pain on yourself. In the book Psychiatric Implications of Tattoos, I don't know, I'm giving you a lot of quotes in the last couple of weeks tonight, but I think our young people need to understand what this stuff's all about. Because even though they sit in a Bible-believing church, you don't know 10 years from now they might have tattoos all over them. Right. Some of the people who are covered with tattoos once went to church. Quote, evidence indicates that it is the mere presence of the tattoo, not its artistic content, that correlates with certain diagnoses. You know what he just said? It doesn't matter what the picture is, the tattoo itself, it's the fact that there's one there. Correlates with certain diagnoses. Thus, any tattoo can be viewed as a warning sign that should alert the practicing physician to look for underlying psychiatric conditions. By the way, that book was written to doctors, medical doctors, when they deal with adolescents and teenagers with tattoos, to look for certain psychiatric problems. Page 115, quote, studies show that people with personality disorders frequently have multiple small tattoos. And you see them with all over themselves. Page 117, research clearly indicates the presence of tattooing was often indicative of a depraved and troubled background. End of quote. Put the next one. Are tattooed Christians any different? No, they're not. They're not. I'll talk about that for just a few minutes. You know, some people might be thinking, well, maybe in the past tattoos were associated with criminals and slaves and all that. We saw evidence of all those kind of things, and maybe associated with moral behavior and all that. But that's not the way it is today. Today, celebrities have tattoos, politicians have them, business executives have them, athletes have them, all kind of people have them. They're high fashion today. They're in sports magazines and fashion magazines. So there's nothing about them today that would remotely suggest that a person has some kind of immoral behavior or underlying criminal behavior just because they have a tattoo. Is that what you really think? Well, let's see about that. A comprehensive study was done in 2001 by Dr. Timothy Roberts. He's a physician at the University of Rochester Children's Hospital. And he did a study of 6,072 young people ages 11 to 21 from all over the United States, all kind of ethnic backgrounds, all kind of economic, social backgrounds, and so forth. In other words, a thorough study was done across the board in society. According to that study, tattooed young people, number one, are nearly 4 times more likely to engage in premarital sex. Number 2, over twice as likely to experience alcohol-related problems. Number 3, nearly twice as likely to use illegal drugs. Over 4 times more likely to express violent behavior. 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. So a kid in the 10th or 11th grade has a tattoo, in all likelihood he's going to drop out. He's going to get into drugs, he's going to get into all kind of immorality and things of that nature, as brought out by this study of 6,072 young people. When Roberts wrote the results of this study in his book's titled Tattooing and High-Risk Behavior in Adolescence, published by Strong Children's Research Center in the University of Rochester School of Medicine, quote, tattooing in adolescence was significantly associated with immorality, substance use, violence, and school problems in bivariate analysis and in logistic regressions, adjusting for socio-demographic factors and peer substance use, end quote. You know what he just said? He said basically it doesn't matter where they are, when kids get tattoos, they're headed for trouble. Amen. Doesn't matter about any kind of whatever demographic group they're in, whatever ethnic group, whatever part of the country, whatever part of society, they are associated with immorality, with drugs, with violence, and school problems, and especially when he's talking about, what was the word he used? Bivariate means problems involving two or more problems in it. In other words, they have trouble with mathematics, they have trouble with science, anything that requires logical thinking. They have trouble with it. He wrote in his conclusion to the study, quote, permanent tattoos have strong associations with high-risk behaviors in adolescents. The presence of a tattoo during examination of an adolescent should prompt in-depth assessment for high-risk behaviors, end quote. As I said, that book was published for the use of medical doctors. So if you see a tattoo during examination, they ought to dig deeper and see what's wrong with this kid. Dr. Roberts himself, by the way, had a tattoo. He got it when he was a young guy. And before the study, he believed there was nothing wrong with tattoos, and that's why he did the study, to prove there was nothing wrong with it. And in the process of doing the study, his mind got totally flip-flopped and changed and saw what the problem really was. And he says, I was more than a little surprised at the result. I guess so. He said, quote, a tattoo is a sign that doctors, parents, and teachers ought to be asking about the teenager's behavior, end of quote. And may I say, just because a kid acts one way at the house doesn't mean that's the way he acts around his peers. Amen. Put the next one up there. Amen. Tattooed Christian young people think Jesus was some kind of rebel. Put the next one up there. That's off the tattoo.
Put the skull on.
See the skull on it? Jesus loves me in my new tattoo. They'll say things like, I'm a rebel just like Jesus was. And I'm quoting some different people here. He said, yeah, he was the real rebel. He rebelled against the system. He's the ultimate rebel. That's why I wear my tattoos. I'm rebelling against the system like Jesus. The lead singer of a Christian rock group called POD, P-O-D. Anybody know what that means? It's an acronym for Payable on Death. That's what it stands for. Sonny Sandoval is the lead singer. And here's the next one. His t-shirt says the whosoever's. He professes to be a Christian. Go to the next one. That's his leg. His arms covered. That's his back. Stop right there. See Jesus up in the corner? It's supposed to be Jesus. Down in the middle there, I'm not sure what that's supposed to represent. It's a man with his head on his arm and his arm on his knee. That's wings coming around him, and he's surrounded by flames. I don't know if that's supposed to be the devil in hell or whatever that's supposed to represent. This guy also had, I didn't put a picture on there of his chest, but his chest is covered with tattoos, and he has in large letters about this high, across his stomach, payable on death, which is what their group is called. Now here's what he says about the Lord, quote, we believe that Jesus was the first rebel. He was the first punk rocker going against all the rest of it, end quote. May I say that is blasphemy.
Amen.
And I'm not so sure that those flames on his back won't engulf him one of these days. We need to just get something straight. The Lord Jesus was not a rebel.
That's right.
Not in any stretch of the imagination. Philippians 2:8, being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. That doesn't sound like a rebel to me. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, facing what he knew was going to be coming on him the next morning, knowing every wicked sin ever committed was going to be placed on him. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, made to be sin for us who knew no sin. Knowing all that, knowing he was going to drink the full cup of the wrath of God against the sin of humanity for all ages, knowing all that, he still said, not my will, but thine be done. Not a rebel. Not a rebel at all. Luke 22, verses 41 and 44, he kneeled down and prayed, this is in Gethsemane, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. That's obedience. It's not rebellion. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground. The Lord was against the world system, no question about that. But it was the world, it's the world that's the rebel. The world, the flesh, and the devil. That's what the rebel is against God. Jesus was not a rebel of any kind at all. It's the world doing the rebelling. What is this all about? It's rebelling against this book.
Right.
We've already looked at 3 verses that say you're not supposed to cut yourself and mark on yourself. So it's a direct violation of a direct command of God for somebody to do what this guy did. Amen. So he's the rebel, not Jesus. I'm glad Sonny of POD is dead wrong.
Amen.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if Jesus had rebelled for just 1 second, he couldn't save you. He couldn't save you. Just wouldn't work. I'm glad he didn't myself. I'm glad he loved us enough that he was obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You ever met him personally?
Hey.
As many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name.
Hey.
All right, Carl, let's do another one. Another major section, the secret of tattoos, is disease. They don't tell you about that. They don't warn, if somebody comes in the tattoo parlor to get a tattoo, they don't sit them down and warn them now, look, this could happen. They don't tell them about all the possible ramifications. And so that harmless looking tattoo could be very, very deadly. There's the risk, always the risk of acquiring some kind of deadly blood-borne disease such as HIV, AIDS, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, tetanus, syphilis, tuberculosis. Any kind of blood-borne disease is potentially there when a person goes and gets a tattoo. One research study published by Dr. Bob Haley and Dr. Paul Fisher, University of Texas Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, it showed that tattoos are the #1 source of hepatitis C. #1 source. Study was published on this title, Commercial Tattooing as a Potential Source of Hepatitis C Infection, published in the Journal of Medicine. And Dr. Haley himself is a preventive medicine specialist. He's a former Center of Disease Control, Infection Control official. So, you know, he's somebody that studied this out. He's considered to be very knowledgeable for such a study. Here's what he said in his study, quote, "We found that commercially acquired tattoos accounted for more than twice as many hepatitis C infections as injection drug use." Now, it's common knowledge that dope heads using needles can get hepatitis, okay? It's not so common knowledge that you can get it at the tattoo center. So tattooers are twice more deadly than drug heads, dope heads. And so he says this means it's been the largest single contributor to the nationwide epidemic of this form of hepatitis, end of quote. You're twice as likely to contract hepatitis C going to a tattoo parlor as you are if you use drugs and illegal drugs and so on and so forth. So, they estimate about 20 million Americans today have tattoos. That number's growing all the time. And this doctor warned about a very big rise in this deadly epidemic of hepatitis C. And the study showed that people who get tattooed in commercial tattoos are 9 times more likely to get hepatitis C than the general public. 9 times more likely, yes sir.
Tell the young people what hepatitis C causes.
Hepatitis C causes the destruction of the liver and thereby death. And it can linger on for years, it cannot show up for years. But it's doing its deadly work inside all the time, even before symptoms show up. Yeah. So, and it's a deadly disease, it's fatal. He talks about what he calls backyard prison tattoos. And in other words, you know, you get some idiot to tattoo you who doesn't know what he's doing. And he says that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the sanitized tattoo parlors on Main Street, where this hepatitis C is coming from. So it's deadly. Hepatitis C kills about 10,000 people a year in our country. A lot of folks dying from it. They say about 4 million Americans are chronically infected with hepatitis C, and that number is going up. And according to Dr. Haley, again, it's the #1 channel for that is getting tattoos. He calls it death courtesy of your friendly commercial tattoo parlor. Anybody ever heard of P.T. Barnum? Barnum and Bailey Service? You know what Barnum said? A sucker's born every minute. Go down and park on Miracle Strip Parkway. We were driving through there the other day, and in the last block there before the bridge, there's 4 tattoo parlors right there in that block. Go down there and park and watch those suckers that are born every minute going in that door. Amen. He gave a case of a 22-year-old grocery store employee who got a simple $45 tattoo, and 4 weeks later, because of the tattoo, he needed a liver transplant in 4 weeks. Hepatitis C, just to give you what's how this danger is so, could we say, undetectable. Hepatitis C, they say, can be transmitted with as little as 0.00004 milliliters of blood and can live on blood-contaminated surfaces such as needles, tattoo machines, and tables for over 2 months And so the risk of hepatitis is very real. Now, so you get the picture. 0.00004 is 4/100,000ths of a milliliter. It takes 3.7 milliliters to make 1 tablespoon. It takes 29.57 milliliters to make 1 ounce. In other words, here's what this involves. 0.0004 milliliters. It would take 92,500 drops that size to make 1 tablespoon. Or 30,833 drops that size to make 1 teaspoon. In other words, it's a microscopic speck of blood that you can get hepatitis C from and die from that microscopic speck. Serious stuff. And you can't tell me, I don't care how spotless they say the place is, you ladies can verify this. Can't you go and wipe the table, walk away and look back and there's a spot you missed? So they got this person on the table, and they're doing all this stuff, and blood, we already saw about the blood involved, and this guy cleans the table after that one leaves. There's no guarantee he got it all off. Don't care what kind of disinfectant he used. We're talking about a microscopic thing here that can kill you. I read this warning in one of the books I checked out, quote, important, and that's all in caps, it's strongly advised for people who have tattoos to get a hepatitis check, and soon. Hepatitis can be unnoticed for many years while doing serious damage. The sooner hepatitis is detected, the better the chances for survival. If you have a tattoo, get checked. End of quote. That's a warning. Of course, the tattoo people won't give you that warning. WebMD, which is a website that gives medical explanations and advice and all that kind of stuff. They call it Russian roulette to get a tattoo. Tattoo procedure is Russian roulette. Quote, as each stick of the tattoo needle opens you up to contracting a deadly disease. Hepatitis C is spread by infected blood and infected needles, which is the virus in the tattoo. Tattoos involve lots of needles making lots of sticks in the skin. Each stick carries potential for contamination, and not just with hepatitis, but also with HIV and other blood-borne diseases. Now listen to what I just said. I'm going to show you something. Involves lots of needles making lots of sticks in the skin. Put the next one there. This guy's getting his arm tattooed. You see what it says underneath there? A tattooing machine can puncture the skin 3,000 times a minute. And every prick is an open door to fatal blood-borne diseases. 3,000 times a minute. That's 60 times a second that thing pokes a hole in your skin. And those holes are anywhere from 1/64 to 1/16 inch in diameter. 1/16 inch hole in your skin is a pretty big hole. And all kind of germs and microbes and disease and stuff can get in there. So you think you might still want a tattoo one day? You know the chance you're taking? Every minute, that machine gives you 3,000 opportunities to get hepatitis or some other deadly disease. Every minute. And the average session can take anywhere from 45 minutes to days in increments. Depends on how big a tattoo somebody's getting. A small, harmless tattoo. One actress got a small tattoo on her pinky, and now she has hepatitis C. Just a small tattoo. Yes.
Well, that's just 1 minute. They tattoo, they must be tattooing 5 minutes, an hour,
A long time.
long time.
Yeah.
And that's only one chance out of 3,000 of not getting some disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
One
that's
chance out of
3,000 times. That's
Yeah.
not very good odds.
It's not good at all.
And that's just for a minute.
That's right.
That guy gets cranked up, you don't.
Yep, you're right. This is nothing new that it spreads disease. It's just not very well publicized. It's been documented for years. According to the Hepatitis Control Report in 2001, said, quote, several studies have connected the practice of tattooing to hepatitis C, B and C virus transmission. That was way back 15 years ago. The book Tattooing and Body Piercing, page 40, quote, tattooing poses health risks because the process exposes blood and body fluids. Because of this, a person who gets tattooed risks getting a disease or infection that is carried through blood. These blood-borne diseases include hepatitis B and C, tetanus, and HIV, end of quote. You notice all these different books are telling you the same thing about it. Page 133, by the middle of the 19th century, I could ask one of these teenagers when the 19th century was, but they probably couldn't tell me. Kids, that's mid-1800s, okay? By the middle of the 19th century, it was becoming more and more apparent that the practice of tattooing was not without its medical hazards. This is back in the 1850s. They knew that. For instance, in 1853, the first case was reported of syphilis being transmitted by the tattooist needle. 1853. A book called Everything You Need to Know About the Dangers of Tattooing and Body Piercing, quote, in the late 1950s, a New York City boy contracted blood poisoning from being tattooed, end of quote. 1961, an outbreak of hepatitis B in New York City was linked to tattoos, and the ultra-liberal New York City outlawed the tattoo from 1961 until 1997. Of course, it's legal there now, but it wasn't for all those years because of hepatitis outbreak linked to tattooing. The American Red Cross will not accept blood from anybody with a tattoo that's been done in the last 12 months. They've got to be at least over 12 months before they'll take blood from them. And in their donation eligibility guidelines, it says, quote, under tattoo, when 12 months after a tattoo, this requirement is related to concerns about hepatitis, end of quote. So next time the doctor's going to give you a pound of blood, say, did the guy you got it from, do you have a tattoo by any chance? Yes.
We're not talking about the cleanest people in the world here.
Oh, you're not. You're talking about, yeah. It was. Tuscaloosa Times reported research that was published in the Journal of School Health, and said 70% of 642 adolescents surveyed in the study reported hemorrhaging while being tattooed. So the danger's right there, what's going on. Now, if you get on tattoo websites, they'll either not mention this stuff or they'll play it down. Okay, you know, 1 out of 500,000 might get hepatitis, that kind. You know, just like the doctor does when he gives you some new drug he wants you to take, and only 1 person out of 50,000 dies, and hopefully you won't be that one. Yeah.
Then you get to those side effects, and you have to change your mind about it all the way.
Most people won't change their mind though. So anyway, they play it down, but the Center for Disease Control says this, quote, can I get HIV from getting a tattoo or through body piercing? A risk of HIV transmission does exist if instruments contaminated with blood are either not sterilized or disinfected or are used inappropriately between clients. The Center for Disease Control recommends that instruments that are intended to penetrate the skin be used once, then disposed of, or thoroughly cleaned and sterilized, end of quote. The problem is, neither state nor federal laws really regulate tattoo parlors. They regulate hospitals, clinics, all that kind of stuff. You know, throw the needle away, use it once, all that business. They don't do that on these tattoo parlors. They have rules, but nobody enforces them. Nobody checks up on them. Nobody tries to see what's going on. And so you're vulnerable to deadly diseases when you walk in the door. I mean, you know, it's just this. The potential is very great in those cases. Hardly any overseeing at all. A lady told me a few years back she took her daughter in to get a tattoo. And she said the place was spotless, ultra clean. Well, okay, but you can't see something that's 0.0004 in size. You can't see that. Book Everything You Needed to Know About the Dangers of Tattooing and Body Piercing, page 18, quote, where tattooing is legal, there is little or no government regulation of tattoo artists. Since there's little regulation of tattoo artists, it's important to recognize that, as in any field, there may be unscrupulous or incompetent practitioners. Tattooing opens your body to potential infection, disease, and scarring, end of quote. All I got to do is drive by the place to look, see who's behind the camera to know that's a shady character.
Yeah.
Most of them. Most of them are. Just look like some hippie punk just got off his Harley Davidson, walked in the back door there, yes.
notice we don't talk a lot about women as far as being against them in the Bible that have piercing and earrings and stuff, but what's the story on those needles and getting that piercing when you get at these little jewelry shops and?
I don't know, they better hope they're using a new needle. I don't know. Mayo Clinic's website, they got this warning, quote, "Keep in mind that tattoo parlors and piercing venues, that is locations, are not held to the same sterility standards as doctors' offices and hospitals. Few states have hygienic regulations to ensure safe tattooing practices in commercial tattoo parlors, and even fewer monitor and enforce standards." WebMed also mentions a lack of sterile regulations in the shops. They say, quote, "By and large, tattoo artists and shops are not required by state or local government to follow the same sterile operating practices as other operations that use needles, like hospitals and doctors' offices." Dennis Dwyer, he's high up among tattooists. He's the executive director of their organization called Alliance for Professional Tattoo Artists, which is supposed to be the monitoring organization for the tattoo industry, okay? Which is run by people that like tattoos anyway, so what does that tell you? But anyway, he admits there's a problem, and he says, quote, "Many people are trying their best to provide safe tattooing, but this industry, tattooing industry, has a lot of non-conformists," end quote. You know what you just said? This is a guy high up overseeing all the tattoo parlors, all that stuff, their own regulating organization, and he says it's supposed to be safe, but there's a lot of non-conformists in this industry. That is a lot of tattoo artists who don't care about any rules whatsoever. Not at all. Myrna Alexander, professor, she's supposed to be a tattoo industry expert of Texas Tech University. She's done research in tattooing for 10 years now. She says, quote, "There are some very reputable tattoo artists out there. They work hard and their studios are as clean as medical clinics. They do a good job because they believe what they're doing is art. The problem is there are many who don't believe that way, don't practice. So how are you going to know which one does and which one doesn't?" I'll shut it down, Carl. I'm going to stop there for a minute because I want to bring some, I want to get some more pictures in there next week to show you the real results of tattooing, okay? The real result is not that beautiful tattoo you saw on somebody's shoulder there at Walmart. That's not it. Yes, sir.
I do what you said, preacher. You see, next time you drive by a tattoo parlor or look out the window, and I drove by about 3, and probably 2/3 of the place was just skulls and bones and death. I was like, wow.
That's
true.
The biggest tattoo things are skulls and skeletons and devils.
Even the first picture you showed that said, "Jesus loves me with my new tattoos," it's got a skull on it.
Yeah,
It didn't even fit.
yeah. Yes, sir.
You know it's gotta be ungodly, because